They were so pious and sanctimonious about the Tories when they were in opposition, and they had plenty to have a go at on the Tories. No question about that. But it's now come back to bite them. The Sue Gray thing, I think, is a bit more worrying because it suggests that Keir Starmer doesn't have control of Downing Street in the way he should. And of course, that brought Boris Johnson down. He didn't have control of Downing Street. It was chaotic. And when a prime minister has to say, look, I'm in control, when he has to say that less than 3 months in power, you know it's a real mess. You know it's in real trouble. When he had normally prime ministers say, I'm in control in their dying days. That's not in their first 3 months.
But that's not process, that's
well,
the
you're
rules.
following the process, but there's a bigger principle at stake, that Labour Party members who are being asked to vote for you should know who's bankrolling your campaign.
That is why the Labour Party set up those rules.
But you won't tell us.
The Labour Party rules say, carry out the checks, which we have to carry out, and I've got a compliance team doing that. Once you're satisfied the checks are carried out and the donations are properly in order, they go to the parliamentary authorities who put them on the parliamentary website so that everybody can see them. I've been following that procedure. That is exactly the parliamentary rules.
But the other candidates in this contest have published who is bankrolling their campaign. You seem to be hiding behind this process. Why won't you simply tell us tonight who are your 5 biggest donors?
Andrew, how can you say I'm hiding behind a process when it's the Labour Party process? The Labour Party, beginning
because you're hiding behind the process.
You know that feeling when you're watching someone explain something, but it sounds like they're speaking a completely different language? That's Keir Starmer in a nutshell. His political charm works about as well as a soggy tea bag in lukewarm water. And just when you thought Starmer was the human definition of dull, in comes Andrew Neil, the political interrogator with a face so serious it could stop traffic slicing. Through Starmer's rehearsed lines, like a hot knife through stale butter. This wasn't your usual critique. No, this was a full-on public roasta, complete political takedown that left Starmer looking like the guy who accidentally brought a spoon to a knife fight.
Why don't you do what the other candidates do and tell... Don't Labour members have a right, as they decide whether to vote for you or not, they want to know where your money's coming from?
I've been asked that many times. I've said it's coming from trade unions, from crowdfunding, from individual donations.
Who's your biggest donor?
It's coming from those 3. One of my biggest donors was put up on the website, I think, yesterday.
Right, that's one of the lawyer.
Yes.
That's the law. But who are your 5 biggest donors?
Well,
you haven't announced. You've only announced about £125,000 worth of donations. This campaign costs a lot more than that. Doesn't transparency just demand? I mean, it's causing you a problem.
First off, let's talk about Starmer's whole vibe. The man gives off all the warmth and energy of a broken chatbot. His political style practically shouts, "I'm just here to follow the script. Don't expect anything unexpected." Watching him discuss politics feels like sitting through a never-ending legal hearing where no one's interested, and everyone's just counting the minutes. Then enters Andrew Neil, human scalpel. Precise, sharp, and ready to tear apart every word. Starmer carefully rehearsed. Neil isn't there to be polite. He's there to ask the tough questions. Starmer clearly doesn't want to answer. Watching Neil expose the gaps in Starmer's act is like seeing a lion play with a tired gazelle, brutal, relentless, and somehow deeply satisfying.
I mean, there are a lot of fundamental issues which need to be tackled in our country. A lot of them are allowed just to atrophy under the Conservatives. They ran out of any reforming zeal. But given the scale of problems that we face, from health to infrastructure and so on, he just doesn't have the blueprint that is going to put that right. I think he can do some things that will improve matters, but this will not be a transformative government. He doesn't have it in him to be transformative. The cabinet isn't good enough to be transformative either. So I think it's the best you can hope for is that things get a bit better. And, even that would be...
What made it even funnier? Starmer's serious lawyer act started falling apart almost instantly. He tried to pull off his usual intense, deep-in-thought expression, but honestly, he just looked like someone who suddenly realized he forgot his lines during a school play. It's no charm, no spark, just robotic mumbling and awkward hand gestures that practically shouted, "Help me."
Pretty much consign everything Labour had to say about tax during the election campaign to the dustbin of history. Consider how the narrative has changed. Before the election, we were assured that all Labour spending plans were fully costed and that there was no need for taxes to rise, bar a few small and specific increases like VAT on school fees. Within weeks of being elected, Chancellor Rachel Reeves claimed to have discovered a £22 billion fiscal black hole left behind by the dastardly Tories. PR and the IFS had already warned that Labour would inherit an eye-wateringly tight fiscal position, but that didn't stop Reeves affecting to be surprised. Nobody else.
Now, the real fun began when Starmer's economic plan started sounding less like a real policy and more like the political version of "just trust me, bro." The confidence of someone who's never had to split the dinner bill, he threw around lofty phrases like investment in growth and fair redistribution as if saying the words alone would magically fix the economy and end inequality overnight. But the moment he was asked for actual details, Starmer delivered the kind of vague, dodgy responses you'd expect from someone who studied economics at Hogwarts. It felt like listening to someone describe a perfect world where money rains from the sky in speeches. Solve everything except he forgot to explain where the clouds came from. Or who's paying for the umbrellas. Every promise sounded great, until you asked how it would work. Then suddenly it all vanished into a puff of buzzwords. Blind optimism. And the quiet hope no one follows up his economic blueprint. Had all the realism of a fairy tale, minus the talking animals and happy ending. If leadership just means pretending to have a plan, then Starmer might as well be the Prime Minister of Narnia.
And we'll look
I
at
don't
the
think sort of
unity too.
thrashing around and blaming X, Y, and Z.
But if you have nothing bad to say about, and I would suggest to you, you cannot plan the future without understanding the past. And if you have nothing bad to say about Mr. Corbyn's leadership now, why did you take part in the attempt to topple him as leader in 2016?
Well, in the immediate aftermath of the referendum, I thought we needed a change, and I set out my reasons for it. We then had a leadership election. Jeremy won it convincingly. I accepted the members had put him in as leader, and I then served him for the next 3.5 years.
You said it was simply untenable to suggest that we can offer an effective opposition without a change of leader. Untenable.
But we then went through a process.
Neil's fact checks landed like sledgehammers, not the soft, rubber kind. But full industrial strength blows that tore through the polished surface and left nothing but rubble where half-truths used to stand. Every time Keir Starmer tried to insist Labour had a clear and credible plan, Neil came back armed like a tax auditor on a mission, pulling out charts, numbers, past statements, and contradictions like receipts from a dodgy business deal. It wasn't an interview, it was a forensic. Takedown. Starmer would say something vaguely optimistic, and Neil would respond as if flashing a giant neon sign that screamed wrong. Each fact check stripped away the illusion of competence. Starmer's responses didn't just lack detail, they lacked direction. It felt like watching someone try to build IKEA furniture without the manual tools or even the right pieces, instead of giving specifics. He leaned on jargon-filled generalities, the political equivalent of guessing C on every exam question and hoping something sticks.
Can you give me one tough message from you in this campaign that the Corbyn left would find unpalatable?
Well, that we have to unite the party, and that means taking people wherever they are.
Everybody wants to unite the party.
Well, everybody wants to unite the party, but you've got to model unity. What I'm doing in my campaign is I've got people from different parts of the party on my campaign working together, because I know that simply saying unity isn't enough. Everybody's going to say that.
That's not unpalatable. What I'm asking you is a position you're taking that the Corbyn left will find unpalatable.
Well, I'm not particularly interested in finding things that they find palatable or unpalatable.
The more Neil pushed, the more Starmer retreated into his signature fog of ambiguity. It was like watching a man try to juggle smoke. Visually interesting, maybe, but ultimately pointless. With each sharp question, Starmer seemed less like a future prime minister and more like a glitching AI trained exclusively on corporate mission statements. He looked like he was auditioning for the lead role in The Political Fog Machine, live at the West End, a tragic comedy starring one man, unlimited buzzwords, and absolutely no answers. Platitudes flowed out of him so thick and formless they could have been declared a climate hazard. He spoke of moving forward and building consensus with the flat energy of a sat-nav stuck in a roundabout. Every sentence was carefully crafted to sound important, while avoiding anything that actually was. It was the political equivalent of decaf coffee, familiar, inoffensive, and utterly useless. One moment he was confidently refusing to rule things out. The next he was nervously declining to rule them in. At times, he seemed trapped in a quantum state of policymaking, both supporting and opposing a position at once. A true Schrodinger's politician. The only consistent thread was that Starmer clearly wanted to seem like he had a plan without ever being pinned to one. But unfortunately for him, that's exactly where Neil thrives, cutting through vagueness with surgical precision. And as Starmer squirmed and sidestepped, one thing became crystal clear. When asked for clarity, he disappears into the mist.
Reeves says the budget was a one-off, that others won't be like this one. But if the OBR's anemic growth forecasts are still too optimistic, she will be back for more tax and more borrowing. But it was a watershed budget. It propels the UK tax burden and public spending as a share of GDP towards European social democratic levels. That was no accident. It was the chosen direction of travel of the Starmer-Reeves project. Just why, unless driven by ideology, they want to join a collection of economies synonymous with slow growth and stagnation is a puzzle. But that is where they've chosen to head. And the OBR, in terms of what it means for economic growth and living standards for the rest of this decade, has already spelled out the consequences.
Here's where the roast really lands: Starmer's so-called vision for the country. You'd think the leader of the opposition, whose main job is to present a clear alternative, would have an inspiring and well-defined plan for Britain's future. But brace yourself. What Starmer offered was murkier than a muddy puddle in a blackout. His vision was so vague it made a foggy London morning look like a postcard from the Bahamas. When Neil pressed him to lay out what a Labour-led Britain would actually look like, Starmer delivered something closer to a broken PowerPoint presentation, missing key slides and featuring bullet points that didn't quite add up. It felt like someone hit skip intro on the whole strategy session. His responses were a slow parade of empty phrases, overused cliches, and buzzwords so stale they could probably claim a pension. All the usual suspects showed up: building back better, uniting the country, investing in the future. Great on paper, except they were served lukewarm, half-baked. And without the faintest whiff of originality, it didn't feel like a speech. It felt like a political safe zone where no risks were taken. No fresh thought was allowed to peek through. Honestly, it was like Starmer was trying to describe a film he never watched or summarize a book he'd barely skimmed. No depth, no energy's just a looping stream of polished but meaningless lines that felt like they were written by a tired PR team the night before. No spark, no passion. It's just the blandest political monologue imaginable. And if that's what the opposition thinks, leadership looks like, well, Britain might as well get used to the fog.
Been seeing some reports over the weekend that the government was briefing that this could add 2% to our GDP. Well, in their dreams, it's never going to do that. It's marginal at best. And the argument is not this deal on its own. Is it, where does it lead? Is that the end of it? Is this the end of the reset? Or is this the start of the reset? If it's the end of the reset, then it's marginal. There are some improvements in some areas where the government's made concessions that it shouldn't have done. But in the grand scheme of things, it's quite small.
And while Starmer babbled in circles, desperately trying to sound coherent, but ending up like a confused parrot stuck on repeat, Neil's expressions said it all. It was the perfect mix of disbelief, pity, and that unmistakable, please stop, embarrassing yourself face you make when someone just keeps digging their own grave with every word. Watching Starmer try to explain himself was like watching someone attempt to teach TikTok to their grandparents awkward. Painfully slow and almost tragic in its effort. You could practically hear the collective eye rolls from viewers, wondering if he even understood what he was saying. Or if he was just reading a script written by someone equally out of their depth. And just when you thought Neil's roast had peaked, he turned his focus to Labour's ongoing internal soap opera. Because if politics is theater, then Labour's internal meetings are a toddler's birthday party gone horribly wrong shouting. Meltdowns, finger-pointing, and enough chaos to make you question if the grown-ups were ever in charge. Neil didn't pull any punches. He grilled Starmer on every scandal, every public feud, and every behind-the-scenes drama slowly unraveling Labour from the inside out. Starmer's attempts to play the adult in the room were about as convincing as a cat trying to herd. Wild mice, completely hopeless, slightly absurd. The mental image, Starmer desperately trying to play the responsible adult, while Labour's chaos spun around him like a reality show meltdown. He's just the guy holding the camera, hoping no one notices the disaster happening behind him. Naturally, the internet had a field day. Social media lit up like fireworks, and memes started dropping faster than Starmer's approval ratings. One showed him as a struggling Wi-Fi signal, no bars, no connection, no chance. Another had him as a buffering YouTube video with the caption, "Please wait while we pretend to have answers." The hashtag Starmer buffering took off in seconds, trending quicker than you could say political crisis. People joked that he needed a tutorial on how to answer basic questions or, at the very least, a script with better punchlines. Some even called the Neil interview a masterclass in how to turn a politician into an accidental stand-up act. And honestly, the memes weren't wrong. Starmer's stiff, robotic performance paired with Neil's surgical takedown created the perfect recipe for viral roasting. Twitter feeds were filled with quips about how his deadly seriousness might just be an elaborate cover for having absolutely no idea what he's doing.
Well, you're right that we still don't know the details, though the one detail we've got, I think, is a problem for the government, which is it's basically rolling over the existing EU access to British fisheries waters for another 12 years. And I saw earlier you were a bit surprised by that because it's way above the upper end of what Britain was expected to concede. Some talked of 5, they maybe got up to 10, nobody was talking about 12. So I think the European Union will regard that as a major victory. That's a notch on their lap.
Andrew Neil didn't just grill Keir Starmer, he turned him into a living, breathing, cautionary tale. After that interview, Starmer's political career looked like a frozen laptop. Spinning wheel, zero progress. Neil ripped right through the polished surface, exposing what many suspected all along, that behind the serious face and lawyerly calm is a politician who can't explain policy, dodges tough questions like it's an Olympic sport, and leads with all the momentum of a buffering icon. If Starmer wants to recover, it's going to take more than clean sound bites and courtroom language. He'll need to bring real substance, genuine conviction, and maybe, just maybe, learn how to survive a grilling without looking like a deer frozen in the headlights. Until then, that interview will keep doing the rounds, rewatched, memed, and dissected like it's the political version of Game of Thrones. Only this time, there are no dragons, just painfully long pauses and a leader slowly unraveling under pressure.